Coming up in our newscast tonight. Security ministers gathered at the top office to fine-tune the details of Seoul's top national security advisor's visit to Pyongyang tomorrow. Part of the special envoy's agenda will be delivering a letter from President Moon Jae-in to the regime's leader. President Moon Jae-in highlights the need to change perception of social overhead capital, that it should focus more on infrastructures directly linked to improving people's lives through urban regeneration and creating jobs. The latest on the trade deal amendment between Seoul and Washington is uploaded online for all to see. We take a closer look into how the revised trade accord could affect or benefit each and both sides. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. Tomorrow, President Moon Jae-in's special envoys to North Korea will cross over to Pyongyang for talks on denuclearization and the upcoming summit. The director of the National Security Office spoke to the press and laid out his objectives for the trip. Shin Se-min has our top story.
President Moon Jae-in's national security advisor, who now doubles as a special envoy to North Korea, stood before the cameras less than a day before he embarks on a trip to Pyongyang for talks. Telling reporters that he will be carrying a letter from President Moon, Special Envoy Chung Eui-yong said his team of delegates plans to hold discussions about ways to completely denuclearize the Korean peninsula and establish lasting peace. And he, too, emphasized the importance of the timing.
Just as the president said, this is an extremely important time in terms of establishing peace on the Korean peninsula. Peace in the region and complete denuclearization go together.
With that, he outlined three main goals for his latest trip to Pyongyang. 1, settling on a specific date and agenda for the Inter-Korean summit, which both sides have already agreed to hold this month. 2, talking about ways to further develop relations between the two by implementing the Panmunjom Declaration, the agreement struck by the leaders of both sides during their first sit-down in April. And 3, negotiating ways to achieve complete denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. But even with those concrete missions, the special envoy did say that at this point, there's no meeting scheduled with the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un. And he also stressed the importance of resuming the talks between Pyongyang and Washington. And earlier in the day, Chung reviewed the details of the trip with the president and the government ministers related to security. South Korea's foreign ministry said that Seoul and Washington are in close communication about the envoy's visit. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
North Korea celebrates the 70th anniversary of its founding, and Air Korea temporarily added more flights between Pyongyang and Beijing. According to sources from the Chinese aviation industry, between Thursday and Saturday, the regime's airline will be operating 6 extra flights between the two cities. The North will be holding a massive military parade and other events this Sunday. Ahead of that, on Thursday, Air Korea is reportedly operating 3 more flights, 1 each at noon, 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., in addition to the one it already has at 2 p.m. The extra flights are indicative of how the September 9th event will be the largest to date. There were, in fact, double the number of passengers today checking in for Pyongyang-bound flights from the Chinese capital, and notably, more foreigners. Putting a damper on North Korea's festive mood as they inch closer to Foundation Day are reports that leaders of North Korea's closest allies may not make it. According to sources, both Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin apparently has no plans to visit Pyongyang in time for the celebration. Lee Seung-jae has the full story.
Reports last month added to speculation that Chinese President Xi Jinping was planning to travel to Pyongyang around September 9th to celebrate North Korea's 70th founding anniversary. But according to sources, the Chinese government is not showing movement that would indicate a trip is being planned. In addition, China's foreign ministry spokesperson said there's no information to give about the Chinese leader's attendance at the anniversary events in Pyongyang, fueling expectations that President Xi will stay away. Also, with President Xi's busy diplomatic schedule in Beijing in early September, Watchers say all signs point to the trip being off. The summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, which opened in Beijing on Monday, has brought together leaders of 53 of Africa's 54 countries, while some countries are planning a state visit to China until September 9th, the day of the regime's founding anniversary. In addition, a state visit by the King of Monaco is also slated for September 5th to the 8th. Sources speculate a ranking Chinese official may travel to North Korea on behalf of President Xi. They say if President Xi sends an envoy to Pyongyang, Wang Huning, a member of the Politburo Standing Committee, will be one of the potential candidates, as Wang attended all three summits between President Xi and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in China earlier this year. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin is also not scheduled to pay a visit to North Korea. The Kremlin spokesperson added there are also no plans for a meeting between Kim Jong-un and the Russian leader on the sidelines of the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok from September 11th to the 13th. He said Pyongyang has not notified Moscow about Kim's plans to accept Putin's invitation to the forum. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in was busy promoting the idea of increasing social overhead capital in projects closely related to people's everyday lives, something that has been clearly reflected in the government's 2019 budget proposal. Hwang Ho-jun shares with us his remarks.
Traditionally, social overhead capital, or SOC, refers to heavy infrastructure like highways, airports, and railways. But President Moon vowed Tuesday to focus more on SOC related to people's everyday lives, for example, community centers, neighborhood sports facilities, and libraries like Gusandong Library Village in Seoul.
구산동 도서관 마을은 우리 정부가 추진하는 생활 SOC의 모범입니다. 지역 주민이 주도하고 지자체와 정부가 지원한 주민 참여와 협치의 대표적인 모델입니다.
President Moon visited the library on Tuesday afternoon. It was built through renovating existing multiplex and detached homes to shorten construction time and lower costs. According to President Moon, the library is a great example of successful urban regeneration, not only revitalizing the village, but with a co-op set up for its management, also creating quality jobs for local residents. He said the government is planning to increase such projects to improve people's quality of life.
사람에 대한 투자이며 지역에 대한 투자입니다. 주민들의 삶의 질을 향상시키는 것과 함께 지역을 균형 있게 발전시키고 일자리도 늘리는 일석삼조의 효과를 거둘 수 있을 것입니다.
As a matter of fact, the central government's SOC development budget for next year is estimated around $7.8 billion, up 50% from this year's total of $5.2 billion. Combine that with investments from local governments, and the budget will amount to nearly $11 billion. President Moon pledged that the government's plan to improve people's quality of life won't be a one-off investment. Rather, he will urge the government to continuously carry out mid- to long-term plans to make sure there's enough SOC in place to support people's livelihoods. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
As the legislature's 100-day regular session begins, the leaders of South Korea's three main political parties will be taking turns addressing the parliament. First to step up to the podium was the chair of the ruling bloc. Kim Min-ji has the highlights from the National Assembly.
Achieving gross national income of over $40,000 per capita through inclusive growth. Lee Hae-chan, the chair of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, said the country needs new tailored strategies for that goal, vowing to support the government's drive for growth led by rising incomes and innovation.
The Moon Jae-in administration's inclusive growth model based on rising incomes, innovation, and a fairer economy will be a new paradigm for the country and will open the era of $40,000 GNI per capita.
He also highlighted the need for next year's record budget of $420 billion in order to better the quality of people's lives, boost job growth, improve income distribution, and expand the social safety net. His comments come amid fierce criticism from the opposition bloc, who claim the government's policies are hurting job growth and burdening low-income households. The ruling party chair, however, called for understanding that in periods of transition there are hard times and that those must be overcome through social understanding and cooperation. He went on to say that sustainable growth in the country will be achieved by the government's inclusive growth model, coupled with a peace economy on the peninsula through improved relations with North Korea. Along the same lines, the ruling party chair brought up the need to ratify the joint summit declaration reached by the leaders of the two Koreas in April.
We'll do our best to get the understanding of the opposition and the people to carry out inter-Korean economic cooperation and to push for North Korea's denuclearization. The ratification of the Panmunjom Declaration can ensure that North Korea does not change its behavior and it can strengthen our negotiation position.
He also urged all parties to work together, suggesting regular talks between their leaders. He said he's willing to talk at any time and be flexible if it's for the good of the people. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Seoul Central Bank released its revised data on the nation's second quarter GDP growth. The numbers show the economy slowing down compared to Q1. Kim Hye-sung help us look beyond the figures.
South Korea's economy expanded at a slower than expected pace in the second quarter. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the country's GDP for the April to June period rose 0.6% on quarter, slower than the first quarter's 1% growth.
Second quarter growth is 0.1 percentage points lower than our earlier estimate released in July. While facilities investment has been revised up 0.9% in the second quarter, construction investment, exports and imports have been revised down.
Although facilities investment were higher than the earlier estimate, it still tumbled 5.7% in the second quarter, marking the largest on-quarter drop since the first quarter of 2016 due to falling investment in machinery and transportation equipment. Construction investment also contracted around 2% from 1.8% growth in the first quarter as investment in residential buildings decreased. Exports, which account for nearly half of South Korea's GDP, rose 0.4% on quarter, slowing from a 4.4% rise in the first quarter, while imports retreated 3%. Semiconductor exports increased, but autos, home appliances, and ships dropped. Private consumption rose 0.3% as consumers spent more on clothes and medical services, but it was still slower than first quarter's 0.7%.
When you look at contributions to GDP growth, domestic demand turned to a minus in the second quarter. The contribution of private consumption dropped 0.1 percentage points on quarter. Facilities and construction investment have also contracted as expected. These data show domestic demand is likely to continue slowing down.
Government spending climbed 0.3%. Real gross national income shrank by 1% as import prices were higher than export prices. On-year GDP expanded by 2.8% in the second quarter, on par with the first quarter. The BOK says to reach its growth target of 2.9% for 2018, the local economy has to expand by 0.91 to 1.03% in the remaining two quarters. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Consumer price index data for last month fell far below the BOK's target of 2%. Government measures to ease electricity bills burden on households are seen as the key driving factor. Here's Kim Ji-yeon with a breakdown of the digits.
South Korea's consumer prices remained in the 1% growth range for the 11th straight month in August. Statistics Korea says overall consumer prices increased by 1.4% compared to the same month last year. The rate of increase was pulled down by electricity, water, and gas prices, which plunged nearly 9% on year. The statistics agency says the government's revision to the progressive electricity billing rates has some impact on consumer prices, lowering them by around 0.3%. Most of the price increases came from vegetables and fruits, as well as crude oil. Prices of agricultural livestock and marine products climbed 3.5% from the same period last year, affected by the record-breaking heat wave.
To stabilize prices ahead of Chuseok, Korea's Thanksgiving holiday, the government laid out measures late last month on 14 main items such as cabbages and fruits to increase their supply at local wholesale markets. Up to 70% discounts will be provided during the holiday period.
Prices of Dubai crude, Korea's benchmark, traded at around $73 a barrel on average in August, raising the prices of local gasoline by 11% on year. Core inflation, which excludes volatile oil and food prices, edged up nearly 1% on year.
The most important factor in determining consumer price increases is probably domestic demand, which is indicated by core inflation. The level of consumer price increases is likely to stay below the BOK's 2% target since core inflation remains around the 1% level.
Last month, consumer price increases fell below the Bank of Korea's target of 2%, raising speculation that the central bank is likely to pursue monetary tightening measures at a gradual pace. The BOK kept its benchmark interest rate at 1.5% for the 9th consecutive month in August. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The revision clauses of the South Korea-U.S. free trade deal is now made public. All that's left is for Parliament to ratify the changes, which the government wants done by early next year. The big question is, how will the latest result impact the local economy? To delve deeper, our Ko Ryun-hee turned to an expert on the matter.
The full text of the KORUS FTA amendment that was agreed upon by Seoul and Washington in March has been disclosed online. South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy explained that no changes have been made to the negotiation results that were previously revealed. Under the revised agreement, the U.S. will extend the length of tariffs on imports of Korean pickup trucks by another 20 years to the year 2041. The agreement also increases the number of vehicles that American car makers can export to 50,000 vehicles per year, up from 25,000 vehicles. Those vehicles do not have to meet Korean safety standards as long as they meet U.S. safety standards. An economic expert says this will not only hurt the automakers but also the overall industry, because many firms have been preparing to enter the profitable pickup truck market.
There are many subcontractors in the auto industry. Some companies make components that go inside the cars. Many will shoulder a heavy financial burden, and some might even need to stop factory operation.
The two sides also agreed to make revisions to the investor-state dispute settlement system, under which investors can sue countries for alleged discriminatory practices. The changes will prevent the overuse of suits and protect the government's authority. It also includes clauses to improve the transparency of anti-dumping and countervailing duties imposed by the U.S. Although some believe this won't change the trade pattern between the two countries, because the revision applies to only few sectors, the expert says there are other things to look out for.
We should all remember that FTA does not protect South Korea from Section 232 investigations or any other U.S. trade protectionist measures. Local authorities should come up with solutions to protect local industries.
Meanwhile, South Korea's Trade Ministry says it plans to collect all public opinion on the revised clauses until next Monday so that it can send revisions to Parliament for approval. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
Most South Koreans are optimistic about the recently reduced weekly working hours. That's according to a report by the Culture Ministry, which shows more than 60% of some 1,500 people surveyed supported the government's 52-hour work week policy introduced last month. They believe the initiative would have a positive impact on society. With 60% responding, they expect work to become more efficient with less unnecessary overtime work. In fact, 70% plan to spend extra time off work with family. The same percentage anticipate more time for leisure and self-improvement. Nearly half the respondents believe the work hour cap would boost the national economy with more jobs created. 80% express concerns as their income could decrease. Before making online purchases in Korea, one would have to endure the inconvenience of installing various security programs and using a public certificate system. To make the process less complicated, local banking authorities are utilizing the latest in fintech. Han Soo-ah explains how it works.
Online shoppers in Korea will be able to pay for their purchases more easily and quickly than ever before. The Korean Federation of Banks last week launched a new private authentication certificate called BankSign. Based on blockchain technology, a decentralized way to secure transactions. And more than a dozen banks have already adopted it. Banking certificates are usually a lot of hassle, but this mobile application, which uses a blockchain-based certificates, allows customers to make online transactions without the central verification institution. It is much faster and more convenient. The old system of digital public certificates made users install lots of software and even switch browsers just to log into the bank. You'd even have to close your browser and start the transaction over again. Needless to say, it got a lot of complaints. For instance, in 2013, when the Korean drama My Love from the Star became popular, Chinese shoppers tried to buy a coat worn by the main character but gave up. Laws were changed in 2015 so that online outlets don't have to use the public certificates, but many vendors have stuck with old habits. Despite the promise of the new blockchain-based system, some experts say it still needs more work to fully replace the old one.
Technically, using blockchain-based certification, the transaction procedures became simpler as all banks share the database. However, some improvements are needed as users still need to download the digital certificate on their smartphone.
Eventually, for the country to make further progress in fintech, industry insiders say the government needs to give them more leeway.
Not only for the development of technologies in the field of certification, but also for the general financial sector, further liberalization of the related regulations and the additional government supports are needed.
In the meantime, the banking sector will continue to introduce various technologies related to the fourth industrial revolution, like big data and artificial intelligence, into financial transactions. 한수아, Arirang News.
More than 7 million foreign visitors have entered the nation through its main gateway so far this year. According to the Immigration Planning Division of Seoul's Justice Ministry, this has been the shortest period of time surpassing the 7 million visitor mark since the Incheon International Airport opened in 2001. Between January 1st and September 1st this year, the number of Chinese visitors recorded 2 million, up 16% on year, followed by Japan's 1 million, up 25%. Crediting the increased numbers of individual trips from China and young visitors from Japan for the upward trend, a ministry official says if this can last, the airport is expected to see the largest number of foreign visitors in a single year. Turning to the latest from the International Shooting Sports Federation World Championship now, the home team is doing an incredible job with steady hands. They've already racked up 4 gold medals. Seo Bo-bin has the highlights from day 4 in Changwon.
The South Korea men's pistol team of Lee Dae-myung, Park Dae-hoon, and Han Sung-woo grabbed another gold medal for South Korea on Tuesday, winning the men's 50-meter pistol team event. The team earned a total of 1,670 points to win South Korea's first gold in the 50-meter pistol team event since the 2010 Munich ISSF World Championships 8 years ago. On Monday, the South Korean women's rifle team of Im Ha-na, Jung Eun-hae, and Kim Ji-hyun also won a gold medal in the women's 10-meter air rifle team event. The team set a new world record of 1,882.6 points. The women's air rifle team has already won 2 silvers and 1 bronze medal in Changwon, but this was the first time a South Korean team has ever won gold in the women's air rifle 10 meters team event. South Korea is currently ranked number 1 in the medal standings with 4 gold, 4 silver, and 4 bronze medals. Seo Bo-bin, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, we can feel the conditions changing day by day.
Daniel, that's right. The changing of the season is palpable. And as much as many welcome this weather change, we also need to be attentive to fast-dropping temperatures at night. Now, as a week goes by, the temperature drop will further increase. And tomorrow we'll be able to see some clearer skies affected by a high-pressure front. Now, the afternoon is still scorching hot, though, and even hotter for Beijing. Now, meanwhile, Typhoon Taebi, meaning a bird, swallow in Korea, is expected to dominate and influence the weather over in Japan and Tokyo with some cloudy skies. Now, the morning lows have gotten a lot cooler these days, with some regions even making it down into the teens. Now, however, it will be beginning with the 20 degrees Celsius mark. And the nation will see a big temperature jump into the day, as most places will get highs of up to 28 or 29 degrees. Now, nice, pleasant conditions are expected to continue until it rains nationwide over on Friday. Now, after the rain, we will see crisper and cooler weather. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for watching wherever you may be tuning in from.